A little bit of turbulence in the gubernatorial scene here in Rhode Island. We'll talk about that coming up.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Great to have you aboard. Thanks very much. The former chairman of the Democratic Party and now the official spokesperson, the senior advisor. He's no longer the chairman. Special advisor. He's already coaching me on this. Bill Lynch will join us coming up momentarily, and it's always fun to have him. We'll go to run down real quick on this Thursday evening, and caught a profile on me there, Kev. It's always scary television. Just me from the side is not good. Just know that. Unification versus politicization. I am really, actually, I'm sure Bill will have a take on this as well. I am very unnerved, not only by the shooting yesterday, but by the response and the analysis and then the behavior that has occurred in the last 24 hours. Let's look at some headlines here. The speaker calls for unity. Well, listen, anytime you call for unity, who's going to criticize that, right? Go ahead and roll it.
We are united in our shock. We are united in our anguish. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
My prayer is that we can resolve our differences in a way that furthers the preamble to the Constitution, takes us closer to e pluribus unum.
Look, you know, Bernie Sanders yesterday jumped into this thing because the attacker, who's now deceased, reportedly was a Sanders volunteer and has had all sorts of problems with Donald Trump. And has anybody just taken a deep breath and suggested to themselves that the very act that he took upon himself is so mentally unstable that the act of violence could be motivated by just about anything? Any group of people, political or not, any other reason? I understand the propensity to kind of, because he asked, or those Democrats or Republicans reportedly before he went out to that field in that dugout and started firing, that this is some kind of hyperbolic political protest reaction. But unless we are ready to redefine taking out a semi-automatic and starting firing it everywhere as kind of a hyper strategy or something like that, unless we're going to go there, and I don't think we do want to go there, what are we doing having this hand-wringing over political discourse? If this ends up calming things down in terms of political contentiousness, okay. But those things are usually very short-lived. And so I think we have a misguided national press reporting and national conversation going on about this. This guy did something heinous, whether he had a political motivation or not. I don't know that the politics have to follow his behavior. Does it make any sense to you? All right, and then you go to this, and by the way, next headline here on this, and some are blaming the right for the anti-right. This is all agenda contesting going on back and forth. The president said the right things yesterday, but then again, today comes. So we go to the phony story. And this all kind of ties together. Let's look at this real quick. Special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. Now it seems the Washington Post story has learned that intel officials, senior intel officials will be part of the interrogation, which means that Donald Trump and what he may have done to fire Director Comey, obstruction of justice and all that are in play, all right? The president's not going to get indicted. There's a DOJ policy against that. Already we have evidence that senior intel officials aren't going to be easy to flip on Donald Trump. And we have that
Best
audio.
of my recollection, I have never been directed to do anything I believe to be illegal, immoral, unethical, or inappropriate.
Right, okay. That's the NSA Director, Mike Rogers. But already today, where's my phone? I had it here. Sorry. That's a casual television show, don't you think? Here's what Donald Trump texted today. You are witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history, led by some very bad and conflicted people. Now, Donald Trump has been talking like this the entire way. One day after the unification mentality, this is what's going on. And what I'm saying is, look, Donald Trump's going to say what he wants to say. Americans are going to use their First Amendment rights the way they want to use them. and trying to tie this awful, heinous shooting incident into the political rhetoric, to me, doesn't tie together. Doesn't make any sense to me. We'll talk more about it on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO, and we'll see what the chairman says about this. Back here at home, we're going to study something again. Usually, we take bills and just throw them for further study. Headline here. We have a headline here. Yes, House panel okays bill for line item veto commission. This is something Governor Raimondo should have pushed harder on. She's on the record supporting this, but she hasn't owned it. This should be for any governor. This is the kind of legislation that 44 other states have, and we need it. And while she supports it, she's done it tacitly, which is kind of her MO in her leadership style, which is, you know, put your toe in the water, but don't get your foot wet. So what happens here? A bill for further study is, well, I mean, most of the bills they put in there end up for further study. This is actually legislation to create further study, which means, see ya. The politics of Rhode Island. Rhode Island Democrats responding to Lincoln Chafee, saying things like this.
I am very concerned about the performance of our current governor. I think she's leaning way too far for the corporate interests. It happened with the hedge funds, it's happening with the corporate welfare. And I don't think she's listening up there in Boroughville to the elected officials, Republicans and Democrats, that didn't want the power plant. That's one example. And then just getting the trains to run on time, the UHIP, the cooler and warmer. It's just one thing after another.
So the Democratic Party responded with a press release that looked like that, and here's an excerpt. It's very disappointing to see Governor Chafee's personal petulant animosity toward Governor Raimondo manifests itself in these ongoing inaccurate misrepresentations. Mr. Chafee spent his entire term as governor acting like, in his own words, a block of granite, while Rhode Islanders got left behind. That's just some of what the former chairman, now special senior advisor?
Special advisor. I don't like senior. It makes me sound like I'm getting old.
Well, you are.
I know, but you don't have to remind me.
You are. You weren't as pure gray when I first met you, and frankly, I had a much lower forehead. So, you know, what are you going to do, brother? There's not much you can do about this.
No.
Good to have you. Thanks. We'll talk about Chafee here in a second. Do you have a thought on this rhetoric thing? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's two very different issues that people easily kind of combined yesterday, in some sense, because of the questions some of the elected officials were asked. But anybody who does what this guy did, in my opinion, has to have some kind of mental issue. And to tie it directly, irrespective of whether they were Democrats or Republicans on this softball field, I think is a bit of a stretch. But I think to separate the two issues, I think there should be a discussion about the tenor of the rhetoric that is now acceptable politically, the discourse. I don't think it's directly related to what this shooter did, but I think it's very hard for anybody to say with a straight face that the tone of our political discussions are the same as they were as recently as 10 or 20 years ago, when you could have a meaningful debate, but it wasn't personal, there wasn't name calling. And you know, I'm going to sound obviously like a political person here, but you know, Donald Trump during the campaign, even the primary, you know, with regard to the way he spoke about his Republican opponents, I think is an example of the fact that the way people conduct themselves. I mean, you look at the debates that we saw this last time around, and then compare those to the debates, you know, whether it's Kennedy, Nixon, or even more recent presidential debates, and it's like night and day. And I think that spills over into local races, and it begins to sort of take on a life of its own, to the point where now I think people are thinking, well, this is acceptable conduct and behavior. It worked. I mean, I guess to some extent it did. Donald Trump got elected. Is that good? I don't think so.
It's so complicated. I mean, historians will look back on this, hopefully, and see this period of time as uniquely worthy of study, I think. So I feel it on the radio phone lines, you know, and you know, given that I have not been a Trump guy, and I think anybody who's a government watchdog and or who leans a little conservative on some issues was assumed to be a Trump guy, right? And I was not, and so I could feel, and still do, feel a lot of this, you know, way more high level than it has been. So I hear what you're saying, At the same time, come on, you go all the way back to Adams and that whole crowd and the kind of vicious attacks that went on and back and forth. And it's cyclical. I think the difference in this political cycle that we've had is that it's personality-based. The whole thing has been personality-based.
Right.
He's made it personality-based, right?
Right. And I think the other thing is you have to recognize, because it's not going to change, is that the coverage, the 24-hour news cycle, right? When you had the Lincoln Douglas debates, you know, and if you want to go back that far, obviously there was no social media.
Right.
Now everything is covered, everything's recorded. You know, there's a race to get news out there, to get it on all these different scenarios. So I think that adds to the pressure of people, you know, wanting to get out front, to make noise, separate themselves from the crowd. And I think that it has gradually led to an erosion of a certain amount of respect that used to exist even amongst those different parties.
I hear you. The very idea that the president, the day after the shooting, you know, labels in writing the prosecutors bad people tells me that he doesn't get it, and it almost foils this momentum toward this lowering of the temperature. And so I almost think that the temperature is irrelevant to what happened yesterday. If that sponsors a conversation about better decorum, I guess that's okay, but I see it as a weird type of bonus.
I think, as much as I hate to admit it, you're right on some of this stuff, in that it's probably, typically, this kind of thing is short-lived. In other words, everybody, I don't care what party you're from or not from, is horrified by what happened yesterday.
Sure.
But the problem I've seen in the past, because unfortunately we've had similar types of situations, there's this general outrage, but it doesn't seem to last very long, and before you know it, the Paul Ryans, the Donald Trumps sort of revert back to form, which is this incredibly divisive, divided Congress.
And listen, there's a very significant portion of the left of the Democratic Party that has been a misbehaving crowd as well. The rhetoric is
I think there's enough blame to go around.
I agree. All right, when we come back, let's talk about what's happening here in this Lincoln Chafee situation, because the press release was actually pretty tough itself. Stay with us.
Well, I went through, as you mentioned, the presidential run, and I saw how uneven the playing field can be sometimes. And after I got out, it certainly was very uneven towards Senator Sanders. And it just makes it difficult when all the elite are making it such an uphill climb in the party. So I do have to consider that. I just witnessed it.
So that's Governor Chafee earlier this week on WPRO on the Terry Granahan program talking about leaving the Democratic Party. It's hard to keep a roster when it comes
referring to other
Chafee.
people as the elite.
Yes.
Not Chafee, the other people.
Yes. Yes. But the audio we played earlier that we really didn't touch on because of this other deep conversation we're having, has the governor really kind of lining up Governor Raimondo for a pretty consistent set of whacks at her, criticisms. So you whacked back. Why'd you whack back? Do you really think that helps at this point?
Well, Lexi thought it would help him in the upcoming campaign, so
Right.
I usually try to go with that.
Are you spooked by Lexi Chris's editorial commentaries on the radio?
No, but as compared
now
to
I got to
your,
bring her up and have her
as
defend
to
herself.
your political
She's finally going to make an appearance on the show she produces. Come on up if you want.
Well, look, at some point, you can't just let, in my opinion, respectfully, you can't just let someone, whether it's Lincoln Chafee or anybody else, just shoot their mouth off over and over, particularly when they're spewing inaccuracies and misrepresentations and not say anything. Such as the fact that the governor has done a great job, and I don't know what his issue is with Gina Raimondo personally. I mean, on the way down here, I'm waiting for my phone to ring because I'm expecting Lincoln Chafee or Alan Fung or Brandon Bell to call me to congratulate the governor and the speaker because they just announced this morning that Rhode Island has the lowest unemployment rate since 2001, when we had the highest in the country. I mean, that doesn't happen by accident. So, when you look at the fact that we've added 12,000 jobs in the time that Gina Raimondo's been there, she inherited almost a $200 million deficit from the prior governor, who, by the way, his name was Chafee. And we've been able to grow the economy, 17 new companies located in Rhode Island in 17 months that we've had this governor, the speaker, and the assistance of the Senate president. That's one per month that we've Groundbreakings happening all over the place. I mean, let's be realistic. you know, Governor Chafee, who, by the way, I like personally, I've said that to you before and to many others, but his recollection of his 4 years as governor is dramatically different than just about everybody else's, at least that I talked to. And I think it was far past the time for somebody to point that out to him, which is what I did.
Well, that's a mouthful. It's hard to determine sometimes where the economic, sometimes governors, presidents get too much credit for good times and too much credit for bad times. I think some of the legislative initiatives that the Speaker and the General Assembly have enacted have helped the economic situation. The governor, no doubt, has a well-articulated, targeted economic strategy that I actually disagree with in principle, but which is going to generate some activity. There's no doubt about that. I mean, so she's targeting industries. She has been transparent about it. She has been clear about it. And there's no doubt it has bumped, you know, the economy. Now, whether it's a long-run best practice, that's worthy of debate for gubernatorial candidates coming up next time around.
Sure.
So, you know, a little bit of a pot shot situation going on with Lincoln Chafee. For some reason, he's hung up on the Burrillville plant as kind of his step into this foray. My guess is he's looking for something to get back into with, and the Burrillville plant is an excuse for that. That's my read.
Look, I haven't spoken to Lincoln Chafee.
Why
so
not?
I don't know.
He's a Democrat, and you're the senior.
Well, no, actually, we're not really
the old man advisor.
Special
advisor.
Well, we don't know where he is right now, right? I mean, his announcements and his discussions of late are, I don't know if I'm going to run. I don't know what party I would run under. I don't know where I affiliate. So I think that we're going to give him some time to give these things some thought, and then when he sort of, you know, comes around to where he is or isn't, then I guess maybe we'll pursue those things.
When you sent out this release and you got some attention for whacking him back, at least I'm guessing, just as a spectator in this, that you're sending him a message that he's not going to have a free lane between now and whatever time he gets serious about this, correct?
Look, as long as I'm in this position, anybody who attacks unfairly, in particular, the governor, the speaker, or the Senate president, is going to hear from me. That's my job. I take it very seriously. I try to be accurate. Occasionally, I try to put a little humor in so people realize that, you know, you got to have a little fun at doing this. But there's going to be no free rides for people who think they're going to just, you know, have open time to whack these people who I think are doing a great job for Rhode Island and getting us moving in the right direction after 4 years of Lincoln Chafee and 8 years of Don Kacheri.
All right, when we come back, we'll, this is vintage Lynch, man. He's a party guy, no doubt about it. We'll talk about some decisions and lack of leadership, in my judgment, that Governor Raimondo has displayed. And then we'll talk about the field, since we're on it. Anyway, stay with us.
Can't just keep bumping along at the bottom. We really have to take strong steps to repair what's broken. Really, if you have a bad foundation, you can't just put more stuff on top of it. You have to go into the foundation and fix it.
All right, that's Pat Morgan, the state representative from Coventry and the minority leader, who now is talking about her interest in running for governor in 2018. You know, it's rocking a hard place here. This is June of 2017. I mean, I can't tell you how long I've lamented that election seasons are way too long, and here I am prodding the Democratic special advisor about the gubernatorial environment. We'll talk about Pat in a second, but listen, the governor is blowing my mind. She kicked the Paul Sox deal right down the road, and right now, if I had $100 to bet and someone forced me to do it, I'd take the odds on the Paul Sox leaving this state, because without legislation that at least sends a message. Are you?
And $100 right here.
Hold on a second. Damn. Do you have my wallet? Can you get my wallet for me? Well, maybe we should just do a beer, since I don't have my wallet with me. Well, good. That, by the way, that's a bet I'm hoping to lose. But what do you know? You gonna tell me something?
I'm not going to say I know anything special or top secret. I'm not involved in those direct discussions. But you and I have talked about this before. I grew up literally, you know, 200 yards outside the center field fence at McCoy Stadium, and I went back when it was the Cleveland franchise, never mind the Paw Sox. And we don't want to lose them. I don't want to lose them. I've said that before personally. I think it would be bad for the state, not just for Pawtucket and Blackstone Valley.
And neither does governor. The governor doesn't want to lose them, blah, 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 blah. But she had it in her hands, and then she let it go. and then blamed language from Mayor Grebian in Pawtucket being a little bit too reliant on the state, which is something bond counsel could have rewritten in 10 seconds.
Well,
and she owned it through her Secretary of Commerce for months without jumping on this thing in a timely fashion, giving the two General Assembly leaders an excuse to be able to say it's on her, it was for her to bring to the table, and guess what? We don't have time.
Well, let me say, I don't think that the Port Sox discussion is over. I don't think, not only don't I want them to leave, I don't think that they want to leave, and I think that the discussions are ongoing. I don't think there's going to be time to get it done in this legislative session, because it would have, you know, sometimes we've talked about this before, appearances matter, you know, at the State House, and it would have appeared rushed even if it wasn't rushed. And I think that there were still some differences of opinion on certain sides of the table as to how the deal should be structured, and they couldn't get it done in time. So I don't see anybody really blaming anybody. I mean, that's a certain amount is
Where's the in-writing agreement from legislative leaders along with the governor saying, you know, Labor Day, the 7th after the Monday, we are going to have a special session to try to put the finishing touches on the diligence and the public hearings involved in the stadium. Blah, 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 blah.
Well,
in lieu of that, these guys are going to fly the coop.
Yeah, I'm not convinced of that. I think that you'll see this issue revisited. You're not going to see any discussion about it, I don't think, now, because as you know, as we sit here taping this program, the budget is going to be released, you know, probably as we speak. And so that will consume certainly most of the rest of the part-time legislative session that we have. But I feel confident, very confident, having been in contact with all of the parties that are involved, that there's going to be a lot more discussion, and there's a shared interest in making a deal that makes sense for everybody. And as the governor has said, in defense of the governor, one that has to first and foremost protect the taxpayers and make sense for the taxpayers. Yeah, I think they'll get there.
Well, I hope they do. I hope they do.
It's only the third inning.
It only leaves us. I don't think it's the third inning. I think they've already called in the bullpen. So I mean, that analogy, or that metaphor,
sometimes,
if you will, is...
Sometimes the relief pitches come in the third inning now, though.
Yeah, when the Sox are playing the Yankees. Sorry, Kev. Now I got you involved in this melee.
No wonder I never get invited down here.
We only get 45 seconds left here. Trillo, Morgan, Fung, Chafee, Raimondo, York. I don't know. I might as well jump in, too. What do you think?
I think that all those Republican names...
Chris is running, too.
With the exception of Lexi, I think all those Republicans that you named would be former candidates.
Knock it off, man.
No, I said, well, aside from you.
By the way, we're talking about violence. This is the first contact I've made of a guest. I can do that with him all the time. This guy and I have been around a long time, you know. But anyway.
I think all those Republicans that you named should run. I think they'd all be good candidates. They'd run strong campaigns. I would love to spend a few months just watching each of them try to say that they want to be the first one to stand next to Donald Trump at the altar. And I think I would encourage all of them to run. Pat Morgan, Joe Trillo, Alan Fung. I mean, they all bring something to the table, and I think they should all run.
The special advisor to the Democratic Party. You know what? Get in the middle of that Paw Sox deal. Someone's got to save it. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hit him straight. He says he does. Last week next. Star-studded cast tomorrow, Timothy Edgar and Michael Kennedy on All That Is Washington. Really smart minds, so join us. See you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Bye.